death of Philip Seymour Hoffman was not the start of the heroin epidemic, but it called our attention to it. Death by heroin overdoses have risen almost 200% in this area over the past decade. In one 24-hour period this year in the Camden County area, 15 people died from overdoses from a pure, strong strain of heroin. So why the sudden popularity, and what can law enforcement and health services do to stop it? MeTV's Veronica Dudo takes a close look at the Delaware Valley heroin crisis.
At the end, I was shooting about 30 bags a day.
With dark circles under her eyes and track marks along her arms, Jennifer Hansen's drug addiction led her to places she never imagined.
I was, with a lot of big-time drug dealers and, doing whatever I had to do to get that next drug.
Living on the streets with a $300 a day heroin habit, Hansen's life seemed hopeless.
Heroin is such a physical addiction that when you basically have to use it just to feel normal.
Hansen first went to rehab when she was just 17 years old. Her heroin habit began at 19, and at 24, she decided to leave the street life behind to embark on the road to recovery, but it wasn't easy.
I would get out, I would think that I could smoke pot again, and I would always end up with track marks in my arm.
After several attempts at rehabilitation, Hansen finally successfully detoxed in 1996. She then entered a transitional facility where she learned how to live without drugs in California for 3 months. She took the tools and knowledge she learned there and opened 5 structured sober houses in New Jersey to help others who are struggling with addiction.
Right now the insurances only pay for a couple weeks in treatment. So these people need more time to be in a supportive, recovery atmosphere.
That supportive environment is exactly what the Hansen Foundation provides at their structured sober living houses for men and women.
We don't take any money from the state. These houses are fully self-supporting.
Currently, the United States is in the grips of the worst heroin epidemic in its history. Between 2007 and 2012, heroin use nearly doubled across the country.
The pharmaceuticals that are coming out today are so strong and so readily available to so many people that has really increased the heroin epidemic in this country.
Terry Burns, the director of operations with the Hansen Foundation and also a former heroin addict, says their houses are in demand now more than ever.
We try to help meet their individual needs. Some people might need to work on a GED. Some people might need to go to the doctors, the dentist, help with job resumes, going to job interviews.
Hansen's hard work has paid off. She's been drug-free for 18 years and has established successful sober living houses. Now married and raising a family, she also found her happy ending. She's even written a song called Street Life to serve as inspiration for others battling addiction. There is a light. Currently, it is estimated the number of U.S. heroin addicts ranges from 300,000 to 500,000, up about 75% from 5 years ago.
Here's what I don't get, Veronica. Why now? What happened all of the sudden that we have a crisis?
Larry, we heard many times the reason why heroin abuse is so prevalent right now is because people who started abusing prescription painkillers found heroin as a cheaper alternative.
And now to talk more about the heroin epidemic from the Newcastle County Police, Major Matt Jamison and also Mark Richmond from the Department of Health and Social Services. Sir, let's talk about, first of all, if we may start with you, about the crime problem that's centered around heroin. Would you say it is the major crime problem in your county right now?
Well, the problem with heroin and the addiction is it drives our property crime. And what we've found in the last year and a half, while we've been able to reduce basically every type of crime by double-digit numbers, the one thing that was lost in that is property crime, burglaries and thefts. And in drilling down into those problems, what we found is that your heroin users are committing the thefts and the burglaries throughout Newcastle County.
And the murders. When I talked to the police chief at Wilmington, he said the murder rate has skyrocketed in Wilmington, and he says it's all due to heroin. Is that fair?
I'm sure that much of it is due to the drug trade, and the heroin problem is certainly a big part of that.
The reason we have you both here is because it seems like there is a two-prong effort. There is a law enforcement effort, but there must be a treatment effort as well. It's almost dealing with supply and demand. Let me ask you, Mark, about the terms that are thrown around. It is a heroin crisis. It's a heroin epidemic. Are they fair?
They are fair. I would add that we have an addiction epidemic. Heroin epidemic, absolutely, but we have more than just heroin out on the streets.
And the treatment of heroin, is it always methadone?
No, it's not. In fact, when you look at heroin as being an opiate, there are many, many different treatment options. Methadone is one treatment. There are other medications such as Suboxone, which is a pill orally, and there's also something called Vivitrol, which is another medication. However, medication alone without some sort of psychological treatment, behavioral treatment, is really incomplete treatment. So you must add those facets to any kind of medication that you may or may not use.
Is it fair to say, and this is a question to both of you, and I'll start with you, Mark, is it fair to say that the pharmaceutical industry helped create this problem?
Well, it's certainly a big factor. The big pharma influences a considerable amount. We have more pain relievers out there than we can ever imagine. We have long-acting, we have short-acting. We have IM injectables, we have orals, we have patches. There's a lot of money to be made.
But in overprescribing those drugs, those opiate-based drugs, they created addicts.
They contributed to the creation of. I mean, there's a lot of facets that go into what caused or creates an addiction. However, the prescription practices of lots of docs, although that's certainly improving, has created some of this problem, for sure.
Major, you've seen a more direct correlation.
Well, the price of the black market prescription medication went up significantly, very significantly, and in fact priced a lot of the users out of the use of those items. At the same time, the price of heroin on the street has gone down as low as $5 a dose. So that has caused some of the conversion from prescription drugs over to heroin, the use of heroin.
Just recently, you made headlines because you had a major bust. Could you talk about that?
We had a bust in the Lancaster Avenue area as part of an operation there we did to suppress a lot of different crime problems, and it was ourselves and the City of Wilmington Police Department and the Delaware State Police. And in fact, as part of that, we had a seizure of over 13,000 bags of heroin, 13,000 doses of heroin that were packaged for sale.
Does that put a dent in it?
That put a dent in it probably for the time being in that given area. I'm certain that put a dent in it. At this morning's TAPS meeting, our Targeted Analytic Policing System, we had mention of 3 separate cases of vehicle stops or seizures where there was over 100 bags in each of those stops. So that gives you an idea of the scope.
So what's the solution?
Treatment. You have to have treatment, you have to have law enforcement. What we're working on in the state is more treatment on demand and having treatment at whatever level of care that an individual needs, whether it be inpatient residential, whether it be outpatient, having more of it, training more of our workforce to be able to treat folks so they don't need substances.
People you see mostly want to be treated. You see people that aren't seeking treatment, I would think. There's the difference. No?
Probably a little bit of both. And just to kind of segue from what Mark said, education, is also a big part of this. educating folks. We have a heroin alert program that we've had in place for a number of years. Marie Allen, she lost a daughter to heroin overdose, and she's been doing this for a number of years. She does talks and goes out to the community, to the schools when she's invited, and gives these presentations. And it's a very moving presentation that she does.
It is.
Also, just to get back to the prescription drugs, which sometimes lead into the use of heroin, we have a 24/7 drop-off box for unused prescription drugs that we maintain in the lobby of Newcastle County Police Headquarters in Menquidale, and that's the only one of its type that's 24/7 in Newcastle County.
Further emphasizing the link between the prescription drugs and heroin, the fact that you need to get that stuff off the streets. We're running out of time, but Mark, I'll give you the last word.
You know, we talk about law enforcement, we talk about treatment, and exactly what the Major said, we have to look at prevention and education. It's a triple aim.
Mark Richmond from the Department of Health and Social Services, and Matt Jamison, Major Matt Jamison from the Newcastle County Police. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back with our roundtable in a minute. And now time for our segment, What the Government Isn't Telling You. You already know that the government can take your money and taxes and fees, and they can spend it any way they want, and you don't get a say in it. Now, Congress is supposed to approve expenditures, but often they don't get a say in it either. Our money is then sent to other countries for some bizarre programs at the whim of some bureaucrat. For instance, the State Department invested $95,000 in a program to teach prison inmates in Haiti how to sew. Who needs a sweatshop? The State Department is also spending $450,000 of your tax dollars to teach women in Afghanistan how to play cricket. The State Department is also spending $10.4 million to teach women in Malawi, it's on the African western coast, birth control. Just teach them to play cricket, that should do the trick. And the U.S. Agency for International Development is spending $3.35 million to improve the quality of media in Armenia. And now, watch this, they have the Armenian TV version of The Bachelor. It seems funny, it's not. We waste billions of dollars on such programs in other countries. Just something else the government isn't telling you. Welcome back. It's time for our roundtable. It's all going to be political this week. Ellen Kaloje, as always, Dawn Stensland-Menti, my wife, and John Featherman is now joining. A little more testosterone to the set. John Featherman, former mayoral candidate, now writing for Philly.com. Let's start with you, John, and we want to talk about this latest poll from NBC. Everybody's talking about politics and jumping right to the 2016 race, which I find fascinating because I do think that's an indictment against President Obama, the fact that people are waiting for the next person already. Hillary Clinton does seem, even now, even after the book, even after the popularity falls, seems unbeatable for the Democrats.
Not so fast. In the NBC poll, in a matchup, Rand Paul 45%, Hillary Clinton 45%. She's not doing that well. She may do well in the primary, still to be determined, but she's not doing well in the general.
I said for the Democrats. I
For the
didn't mean
Democrats.
for the Democrats. She seems like this early, she's very difficult to beat for the nomination, if not impossible.
She's difficult. She's not impossible. There's a lot that's going to happen. There are a lot of books. There are a lot of videos. There are a lot of things that are going to come out between now and then. There's some other people that could be standing in the way, such as Elizabeth Warren.
John, you're saying the Clintons have dirt? Is that what you're insinuating? Really? I'm shocked. And I think it's funny that you had to go out and find somebody more conservative than me to be on this panel. And you found John Featherman. He is true conservative.
But I think what everybody underestimates is that Hillary Clinton, everybody knows her.
Yeah, the name recognition is through the roof.
Oh, yeah, it's at 91%, I think, in the poll.
Absolutely.
91% of the people knew who she
How do
was.
you
But having
It's hard to
name
compete with
recognition is
that.
not always a good thing. It can be a bad thing, too.
Not for her.
Double-edged
And what nobody
sword,
seems
yeah.
to understand is that when, let's say she becomes the candidate, and she is the candidate, women are going to come out for her. And
Not
everybody's-
all women, Dawn.
A lot of women are
Not
going to come
all
out for her.
women.
but a lot of women
Not
are.
you.
Not me, but a lot, you're right. A lot of women. I would love, as we've talked about, I would love a female president, but not her.
Now, Elizabeth Warren's interesting because she may run into the same problem. President Obama allegedly, behind closed doors, is encouraging Elizabeth Warren to run. He sees her, in the new book, he sees her in Blood Feud as mini-me, as the person that could come out of nowhere and beat Hillary Clinton once again. She's interesting because she does the same thing. She steals a narrative away from Hillary Clinton because, as you pointed out, she's a woman. This is another woman. That hurts her?
Yes.
Hurts Hillary.
Yes, so I think, yes, of course. But at the end of the day, if you have a man and you have whoever it is and you have Hillary Clinton, I think what nobody is prepared for is that all of a sudden women are going to look at that and say, this is a highly qualified woman. This is not a rookie president that we've had in the past, you know, that beat her out in the primary in Pennsylvania. That was a huge story. This is a woman who's highly qualified.
If Elizabeth Warren runs, can she win?
Oh, absolutely. We've got so much time between now and then, and there's a lot that will come out. And Elizabeth Warren has almost no negatives.
That we know of.
She doesn't have a controversial husband, so we don't have to worry about that.
The New York Post, there's a new book coming out, put out by a former Secret Service agent, the Secret Service agent that broke the story about the other Secret Service agents philandering in Colombia and hiring prostitutes. He's got a new book out. He says that Bill Clinton is up to his old ways, that actually when Hillary leaves their house in Chappaqua, when he leaves the house in Chappaqua, this woman is brought in by the Secret Service, and she even has a code name named the Energizer. Only reason, I know it's a great name, only reason it's significant, as you pointed out, the Democrats, the last time that Hillary ran, didn't want her, according to Game Change, because Bill was still philandering, and they thought that would come out as an issue. If this is true, will it come out this time as an issue?
Dawn and I completely disagree on this, so go ahead, Dawn.
Okay, here, my whole thing, and the reason this issue infuriates me, and I think it's primitive. I think that there's something in society that says, well, if this wife, if she can't please her man, how can she run the country? And that is so wrong. And I think that if that comes out, I think that will so infuriate women that even women who might be more conservative might just vote for her because they're so PO'd that they would say this line. It's crazy. And this Secret Service agent, first of all, that's a violation that he's writing these books. So who is he?
Right, that was your point.
You know, what kind of integrity does this guy have?
Integrity? You're going to use the word integrity in a conversation about the Clintons? I mean, come on, Dawn.
A couple key points to bring up. And to your argument, a couple of key differences to bring up. In most cases, the man wasn't president of the United States. You know that if he gets there into the White House, even as first man, he's going to have some say in policy. He's not just going to walk around in his bathrobe and you know.
Thank God.
Yeah. So he's going to have some say in policy. So it's not just some other man. So isn't he significant for that factor?
He is. But again, people are going to look at this very carefully and say, do we want Clintons in the White House? It's not just going to be Clintons. Is this country a monarchy? Do we want to have Clintons or Bushes in the White House? Almost during half my lifetime, there has been a monarchy of two families. Maybe nothing against Jeb Bush, but maybe we need a new break.
John Featherman, thanks for being here. It was great. Dawn Stensel-Menti, Ellen Kaloje, that wraps up our roundtable, and we'll be back with more right after this. Just a few final thoughts about heroin. After a 15-year epidemic that started in the late 60s that ruined families, hurt society, and accelerated the spread of AIDS and HIV, there was a strong, concerted effort in this country to stop heroin use. And for a while, it worked. So what brought heroin back? We did, with the help of pharmaceutical companies and the money they dole out to politicians. They help sanitize the deadly path to recreational heroin use. You see, the same opium used to make heroin also makes a long list of prescription painkillers. Those painkillers were overused and abused for years. Oxycodone, Percocet, Vicodin. Heroin was legalized through deception, and it was passed around like candy at clubs and parties. And when the federal government finally made heroin light difficult to distribute, many of the users went searching for a substitute. What they found was the real thing, purer, more powerful, not just a substitute, but an upgrade in intensity. The problem is that heroin's potency and purity can vary from shot to shot. There are no federal standards on the street, and the results are a new epidemic, more damaging and deadly than ever before. In most communities across America, heroin is claiming more lives than murders or car accidents. This is not a problem that just dwells in the inner city or among hipsters or somewhere else. This is everywhere. A problem in the suburbs, our high schools, our homes. And it's time we take this much more seriously. New Jersey, Philadelphia, Delaware, they've been especially hard hit as heroin flows freely up the I-95 corridor and back again. In our area, we should be the national leaders in fighting the epidemic through both law enforcement, through education and treatment. Let the new war on drugs start here, and the pharmaceutical companies should fund it. After all, they're the ones who made heroin hip again. See you next week.